Now that you know how to download Effectopedia, we are going to run it for the first time. And I already did download it myself, so I'm going to run it from the desktop. Also, I'm using the Effectopedia T version, which is recommended for following the tutorial. Um, when you start Effectopedia, pay attention to the address bar here at the top. It initially connects to Effectopedia org server, and it says initializing, and if the connection was successful, it will retrieve the most recent version of the database. In this case, this is revision 11, and you will be able to explore its content and also publish back your changes. I also would like to point your attention to those three tabs at the top. Welcome and Help tabs are common between the two versions of Effectopedia, but the System Console tab shows only in Effectopedia T version of the program and can help you identify if some internal error was detected, and it will display here the error and that it wasn't handled. So going back to the welcome page, you can see that there are several options to use Effectopedia, and while I'm moving my cursor, you can see at the bottom of the window there is what we call context sensitive help, and this help describes what is the item under your cursor. So if I go to the top line, which is explore the current status, you can see a little bit more information about this item. And the idea of the context sensitive help is it's not only detecting where you are in the screen, but also detects what mode you are using Effectopedia with, and it will provide you with hopefully adequate information on how you can continue from that point on. So let's go and click on the first link, which is the explored current status of existing adverse outcome pathways. And you can see that what Effectopedia does is populate this list of existing adverse outcome pathways. It can be also done by clicking this list button. And you can see that all of the pathways that we are currently seeing are from one and the same data source, which is the Effectopedia revision 11. But bear in mind that you can actually load more than one data source and search in all of them, and then you'll see for each individual data source all the pathways that are available. So let's go and see what the description of your search results are. You have what is the type of the object that was found, so in this case pathway, the title of the pathway, some keywords, the elements that are included, and the data source. And if I click on the title, um, the pathway will be loaded in the pathway viewer and editor at the same time. So it is very useful if you use Effectopedia on a fairly large screen, so you can see a big portion of the pathway. And what you are presented with is the pathway diagram. The pathway diagram has a default dimensions in which it is projected. In this current pathway, the horizontal axis is level of biological organization, and the vertical axis is sex. And if you look at this segment or dotted box here, you can see that, for example, for male and female, so mixed sex and molecular level, we have one molecular initiating event binding to DAR. And this specific projection of the pathway space happens to be very useful for this pathway because we have very different behavior for male part of the pathway and for the female. And you can see that this is still a valid pathway because it starts from a single molecular initiating event and results in a single adverse outcome. What you can also see from the initial view of the pathway is that here on the right side of the screen we have the description of the pathway page, or the whole pathway that we are currently seeing in the screen. If you want to look at the specific element, you can choose this edit mode and just select one of the elements and click on it, and you will see the content of this element. So if I click on the chemical, I will see the chemical. If I click somewhere outside of the screen of the pathway, it will load the description of the whole AOP. Another thing that you can use for navigation is double clicking. So when you double click on any of those elements, it will load the dedicated editor for this element, so you can see the information a little bit more spread. You can also use those links in the side panels. So for example, we opened binding to DER, and you can see all the chemicals that can bind to ER, and you can see all the downstream key events that are result from the binding. So if I click on the title of the ER transcription factors, it loads the ER transcription factors in the editor on both sides. It also shows what was the causes of the ER transcription factors and what are the downstream key events. Also, for navigation, you can actually use those panels and again double click on the title. So if I double click here, it will again load the binding to DER in the dedicated editor. Let's go back to search, and I would like to show you how you can load multiple pathways in the viewer if they're related to a common element. Let's start with finding all the pathways that are containing this aminoaniline chemical. I will just list all the chemicals by by IUPAC name or name, and just click list, and you can see that aminoaniline is a chemical that actually has two pathways associated with it. So the first pathway is estrogen binding mediated population reduction, and the second one is oxidation of hemoglobin mediated population reduction. And you can note that there is a pathways link in front of those two pathways. So if I would like to load just single pathway, I can click on those titles, but if I want to load both, I can just click on pathways. And now you can see that our aminoaniline chemical is showing us connected to those two pathways, and they result in the same adverse outcome, but you can see that there are clearly two pathways. You can also see this by just looking at the description of aminoaniline chemical here in the list of associated pathways toward the bottom. You can see that this is part of two AOPs. Let's look for something that is really common across a lot of AOPs, and this is the death key event. So I'm going to look for for adverse effect and just look for death. You see that this is really part of multiple AOPs. So if I click on pathways, it will load all AOPs in one screen, which becomes very busy picture, but we can still visualize it. One interesting you can actually zoom only particular element by holding Control and clicking on the element itself. So um, let's see, yeah, this is the network of all the pathways that contain death key event, and it will become very useful when Effectopedia is used in predictive mode. Then you can load everything that is related to your adverse outcome, for example, and it will show all the relevant AOPs that are contributing to this adverse outcome, and then you can probably manipulate um, which of the initiators are present and combine their action. So with this, I would like to conclude the exploration of how you can search and browse AOPs in Effectopedia and address any questions that you might have. We had one question from the first day of the webinar broadcast, which is actually very frequently asked, and this is there any way to include toxicokinetics in the AUPs? And the answer is that toxicokinetic is not part of the AUP. It is what happens before the key event is triggered. But because we try to create a tool that could be very useful for practical prediction purposes, that's why Effectopedia from the very beginning had the um, ability to actually connect two chemicals. As a matter of fact, I think I can show you an example for that. And in those two connected chemicals, we can summarize all the toxicokinetics in a simple model. This is again happening before the AUP starts, but still, because we need to be able to estimate how much of the chemical will be at the target site, we would like to be able to um, show this information. So this is early version of renal failure kidney AUP, which we're developing as part of the EU Tox Risk project. And yeah, this beginning of the pathway shows potassium bromide, which is externally exposed to the kidney or to the organism, and then it needs to penetrate and go to the target site of the kidney cells. And here in this link, we can actually provide in the future toxicokinetic models. The interface is not here yet, but we have some simplified dialog here, which asks for the enzyme system or the environment where this transformation is occurring. So another place where we can envision to use toxicokinetic data is when we estimate how, for example, we can interpret in vitro assays in terms of in vivo um, relevant concentrations of the chemical, and basically doing the same two steps for the chemical before it gets to the target site, but we do it here on the assay base. So hopefully this addresses the question.